Hi, everyone. Welcome to Youth Bombs. I'm Craig Anderson, and we are the voice of young conservatives in Alachua County. Today, we have with us Alex Pantinakis from the Republican Party of Florida, here to talk through some of the constitutional amendments that are going to be on the ballot in November. So, why don't we just get right into it, Alex? First off is Amendment 1. Partisanship for school board elections seems pretty straightforward, seeing the Republican or Democrat label next to the person's name on the ballot. Are there any side issues to worry about, or does this sound pretty straightforward to you?
First off, thank you for having me, and I want to applaud you and your group in Alachua County by taking the time to really delve into these amendments and how you can get involved. Here at the RPOF, our chairman Evan Power is working every day to empower the grassroots, build a bottom-up organization. Appreciate you guys taking the time to research these important amendments. The state party, and by extension, all of the local county parties, do have official positions on all six of the statewide amendments that'll be on Floridians' ballots in November. To get to your first one, yes, on Amendment 1, we are supportive of Amendment 1. No voter should not know what the party affiliation is of a school board member or a school board candidate who chooses to run for office. This isn't about adding certain political dynamics into school board races. This is about transparency. You have a lot of counties around the state where good Republicans and conservatives elect folks under the guise of a nonpartisan candidate who don't represent their values. You've seen it around the state. So we support this amendment. We hope that it garners the necessary 60% statewide approval to go into Florida's constitution because, again, Floridians and voters have a right to know what the party affiliation is of these candidates when they go and vote for them in their county elections.
Absolutely. So important to have that transparency and for voters to be able to know who they're voting for or against, getting to see that data on the ballot.
Mhm.
So, sounds pretty straightforward. Next up is Amendment 2, the right to hunt and fish. This would preserve the right to fish and hunt, including by the use of traditional methods as a public right and preferred means of responsibly managing and controlling fish and wildlife. The amendment does not limit the authority granted to the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission under Section Article 4 of the state constitution. So, does this get away with having a license?
No, no, it doesn't. But what it does do is it reflects the 20 some odd other states in Florida in the country who have the right to fish and hunt permanently in their constitutions. Florida does not, as it stands right now, and this is about preserving that right for generations to come. Look, as Republicans, we're very happy right now with government and how it's being run here in the state of Florida. We super majorities in the House and the Senate. We control every statewide elected office in Florida, but you don't know what the future will hold. So we want to put this to the ballot. The RPOF supports Amendment 2. We again hope that it'll clear the 60% number because we want to put in Florida's constitution from here till kingdom come the right to fish and hunt for our for folks who do that and put it in our constitution permanently.
Yeah, really sounds essential, absolutely, and just something that's common sense. Some voters might wonder why the language of by traditional means in the amendment.
You're talking about in the summary language or in the ballot language or specifically?
In the ballot language specifically.
Okay, so this was crafted by the people who support putting this in Florida's constitution by our fishermen and hunters. So putting that in there the traditional way you do it, um, fishing, hunting by traditional means was the onus behind phrasing the language that way. Also, with amendment, all of these amendments were written, by the way, by the folks who support them. So, just important clarification: amendments 1, 2, 5, and 6 were put in there by Florida's legislature. Amendments 3 and 4 were ballot uh, petitions. So a certain number of petitions were collected statewide to put those on the ballot, just for reference.
Okay, understandable and good to know the distinction between the two. Looking at Amendment 3, marijuana, this would allow adults 21 or older to possess, purchase, or use marijuana products and marijuana accessories for non medical personal consumption by smoking, ingestion, or otherwise. It allows medical marijuana treatment centers and other state licensed entities to acquire, cultivate, and process, and manufacture and sell and distribute such products and accessories. It applies to Florida law and does not change or immunize violations of federal law. So it establishes possession for personal use. Does this allow people to become dealers?
No, no, it doesn't. And just so we are clear, the state party is recommends a no vote on Amendment 3 and Amendment 4. Look, Florida has a reputation around the country. We're the number one tourist attraction in the state or in the nation. We have a certain family friendly brand, and we do not need full legalization of marijuana in the state of Florida. And my opinion of this, and I think this is reflected by our chairman, Evan Power, these two amendments are very cynical. 3 and 4. The reason that these are on the ballot is because Joe Biden is incredibly unpopular, and the Democrats are going to try every mean they can, every trick in the book to try and encourage people to show up and vote in November, because it's certainly not going to be because they're happy with the job that Joe Biden is doing. So this is in there purely for politics, purely to get out the vote of a certain segment that they believe will vote for Democrats around the state. I think Floridians see right through it. I think that these amendments are going to go down in November. But let's be clear about what this is. This is a get out the vote tool for the Democrats.
Okay. Yeah, no, makes sense. It sounds like they're just trying to do that and bolster their turnout so they can try and win rather than work for Floridians. Additionally, would this be the marijuana equivalent of liquor stores where you can only buy it at certain places?
This opens it up to anyone, whether you have a prescription or not, to get marijuana in the state of Florida. Right now, there's medical provisions involved. Those also passed by referendum some years ago. But again, the reason we want to oppose this amendment is because it goes against Florida's brand. Our governor has talked about it several times. Like, we don't need this state smelling a certain way. We don't need to damage our brand. And if you combine the passage of Amendment 3 and Amendment 4, you'll become the pot abortion tourist destination of the country, and that's a shame. So we're hopeful this amendment goes down.
Yeah, no, understandable. And speaking of Amendment 4, that's the big one that a lot of people need to pay attention to because it's a sneaky one. Legalizing abortion says that no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. This amendment does not change the legislature's constitutional authority to require notification to a parent or a guardian before a minor has an abortion. So, patient's health, we know that's really broad. That could be anything. Oh, I have a headache, so I want an abortion, right? I mean, it's just very broad and it's very suggestive. So, would that be something where it could just be carte blanche for unlimited abortions?
Well, that's the way it's written. Normally in the abortion debate, at least as far as I can remember, it was always the life of the mother. The life of the mother was what the central point was there in the debate, no matter which side you stood on the argument. That's not in here. It says the health of the mother. Well, what does that mean? That could be, to your point, interpreted very broadly. It's another reason why we do not support this amendment. Um, this would give us some of the most liberal abortion laws in the entire country, certainly the most liberal abortion laws in the Southeast, more liberal abortion laws than many countries in Europe. We don't believe that's where the majority of Floridians stand. In my opinion, a fairly deceptively written amendment. Um, the health piece one, and also the notice it doesn't say parental consent. It says parental notification. Those are two very different things. It's important to have consent for parental consent on this issue when minors are involved. So those two reasons alone, and many others, we hope this amendment fails in November.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right. Certainly don't want to be the abortion capital of the South or the nation. So understandable why that's such a tragic amendment should it pass. Additionally, regarding the parental notification, do we have any data on how many people this might affect?
Not off the top of my head, but anyone that's in that situation should obviously have their parents involved. It's a tragic situation, no matter which way you square it. But this is not the solution to that problem. A blanket amendment like this with loopholes in it that will be abused, and as I said, make our laws some of the most liberal in the country is not the way to handle it. And we're going to be doing everything we can at the state party to defeat this amendment in November.
Absolutely. Well, that's great to hear because the left is certainly being sneaky about this, and we don't want unlimited abortion.
Well,
Looking
and
at,
that's the a part of just getting back to the get out the vote idea. You know, they think that these two amendments are going to drive out turnout for their side, and that's how I think this can backfire on them, and that's what we want to do. We want to drive out turnout from our side. Engage voters who are passionate about Amendment 4 specifically, those who are pro-life, those that are eager to see this amendment fail. It's important that we get out and talk to people about some of the pitfalls that come with that amendment, so we can get as many Republicans to the polls as possible in November and vote Republican up and down the ballot.
hmm absolutely, absolutely, so important, and it's great that the party is focused on that. Looking at Amendment 5, this seems to be a bit more of a technical amendment. It requires an annual adjustment for inflation to the value of current or future homestead exemptions other than school district levies for which every person who is legally eligible. So that sounds good, but do we know how the inflation number will be calculated?
It'll be calculated every year based on the consumer price index that come out of the Department of Labor. We support this amendment. We think that inflation should absolutely be a factor when calculating these things, and we expect it to pass. And as a reference point, this is one of those amendments that was approved by the legislature. And looking at the tallies and how those votes went down, it was bipartisan support. Republicans and Democrats supported this in the House and the Senate in Tallahassee. So we support this. I think it's a common sense amendment, and we look forward to getting it over the finish line in November.
Absolutely. Yeah, just looks like pure common sense and something that everyone should be on board for.
And frankly, in Joe Biden's economy, inflation should absolutely be a factor when we're calculating some of these things. I mean, the price of goods and all the things going on, housing costs specifically, have gone through the roof over the last 3 years. And Floridians, to ignore inflation in this environment is doesn't make any sense. So hopefully, Florida voters will put a stop to that.
Right. Absolutely. The economy is not doing well right now, that's for sure. Looking at Amendment 6, repealing public campaign financing, this proposes the repeal of the provision in the state constitution which requires public financing for campaigns of candidates for elective statewide office who agree to certain spending limits. I never even knew about this. What's the thinking behind this one?
It's interesting. Florida is one of only about a dozen states in the country that allows for any public financing for our elections. So basically, a candidate can opt out of the normal finance process and choose to get financing via the taxpayer. Our POF doesn't support that. The Florida legislature overwhelmingly voted to put this on the ballot. No taxpayer should foot the bill of a politician and fund elections. This is a fairly outdated provision in Florida law anyway. It's somewhat archaic. There's a reason there's only a few states around the country that even have it, and we hope that this one passes in November. Vote yes on 6 to repeal any public financing for political campaigns in Florida.
Absolutely. With so many other urgent issues across the state, we don't need to be giving politicians more money when people
Right.
are hurting in Joe Biden's terrible economy. So, would this be couched as now all bets are off?
No, I think what it does is it removes any possibility for any red cent from any Florida taxpayer going to support a politician. We have, you know, quite a bit of election law here in Florida. It's very clear how elections run in this state, particularly the financing piece. Um, that that's not what this is about. This is about making sure that taxpayer dollars don't fund any political operations in Florida, and I would expect it to pass and reach the 60% this year.
Understandable. And now, couple closing thoughts. Let's talk about voter registration and what the party is doing to get more Republicans in Florida.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've seen, watch the numbers like I do. It wasn't that long ago that there were more Democrats in Florida than Republicans. It's now flipped, and we're pressing on the gas at the Florida GOP. We cleared over 900,000 more Republicans than Democrats in the state. And then just today, we saw now that's over 920,000 more Republicans than Democrats in the state of Florida. It's our goal, with the help of our state party and local party leaders, like what you guys are doing in Alachua, that we reach 1 million more Republicans than Democrats in Florida by year end. We think that that's well within grasp, because this is what we want to do. We want to drive up turnout and give President Trump as large a victory as possible in November, and set the record for the highest margin a Republican presidential candidate has received here in some time. And what does that do? That helps all of the local down ballot Republican candidates that so many of us are passionate about. Your county commission, your school board candidates, your state house, state senate seats, your congressional seats. A rising tide running up that margin as much as possible lifts all of those votes for our candidates. That's why we're so focused on voter registration. We want to make sure we keep, as I said, moving forward in that regard. We're pouring real resources to the county parties on voter registration, giving them the tools they need to get out the vote for our candidates.
hmm Excellent. And that's really great that we're poised to clear 1 million. The more the better. So that's
We're going
excellent.
to work on Alachua too. It's probably going to take us a while, but we're going to keep chipping away there too.
Yeah, yeah, just keep up the hard work. Love it. And now vote by mail is a bigger initiative for Republicans this year than in the past. What can people expect and what do some of the numbers look like?
So, absolutely, we want Republicans to vote. Like that's our. If you get right down to brass tacks, we want to register Republicans, make sure those Republicans vote, and make sure they vote for Republican candidates. So we want folks to vote in whatever method that they feel comfortable voting. If you want to vote on election day, absolutely vote on election day. If you would like to vote early, we encourage you to vote early. If you would like to vote by mail, voting by mail is absolutely an option in the state of Florida. We just want to make sure those folks get out and make their voices heard in November. So, to that end, Chairman Power has launched what we call the Republican Renewal Initiative. So, for our Republicans who voted by mail in the general election of 2022, though all of those requests, those standing vote by mail requests due to change in Florida law, have reset for this election cycle. And upon last look, there were over 300,000 Republicans in Florida who voted by mail in the general election of 2022 who have not renewed those requests for the upcoming election this year. So we're all hands on deck communicating with those voters. I know your chairman in Alachua County is highly invested in this effort, talking to those Republicans. We know there are voters. We know that they're Republicans and they vote by mail. We're not trying to convince anyone new to vote by mail. We just want to notify them that as it stands now, those existing vote by mail requests have expired. So we launched RepublicanRenewal.com. which lists all the counties and their individual links for where they can go to find, just renew those requests online. We're also giving literature to the local county parties, giving them that information, a handout, which I've got right here, which shows which you can distribute, have your candidates take it with them, work those lists and those targets of all of the Republicans in the county, make sure they get those requests in, because our concern is that come, October of this year, there might be some very confused voters as to why they haven't gotten their ballot yet. So we're going to keep pushing on that. We're going to keep harping on it and make sure that our Republicans get their ballots in November.
Absolutely. RepublicanRenewal.com sounds like a great resource for voters looking to
Right.
vote by any legal means necessary to get their ballot in. That's great. Lastly, how can people get involved this election cycle?
Absolutely. So this is the most important election of our lifetimes, no doubt. You see what's going on with the economy. Inflation is out of control, an open border, crime surging in major cities all across this country, and the only way we can put a stop to it here in Florida is making sure that our 29 electoral votes stay in Donald Trump's column. So Florida.gop is the best place to go to get involved. Click the volunteer tab. You can also look at the county tab and find your local county party, visit those, and get involved at the local level. Contact your local party leadership and see what they're up to and how you can go out and register voters in your local community. How you can find those voters who are Republicans who haven't renewed their vote by mail requests and contact them. We're a grassroots organization at the Florida GOP. And in a presidential election, you need every person you possibly can going out there and spreading the word, because the Democrats are coming. Make no mistake about it. They absolutely still want to keep Florida in play, and we want to dash their hopes in November. And we can only do that if we get involved and get to work.
Right. Absolutely. We got to work together. And when we do that, as conservative Republicans, we'll win up and down the ticket. That's excellent. So, Alex Pantinakis, everyone, thanks so much for joining, talking Florida constitutional amendments with us. We really appreciate it. And thanks again for really breaking this down for the voters.
Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you out there and getting out the word for our Republican candidates. I appreciate the time.
Likewise, thanks so much.